Donald Trump's potential second term, 2025 to 2029. Historical comparisons and deeper insights into the potential impacts of his policies. Prediction for Donald Trump's presidency, 2025 to 2029. Donald Trump's potential second term as President of the United States, 2025 to 2029, is expected to bring profound changes to the U.S. and the world, spanning economic, political, and international relations domains. Below is a detailed analysis of Trump's plans, promises, implementation strategies, and anticipated impacts. 1. Economic policy. America First plan. Trump is expected to continue promoting his America First economic agenda, which includes measures such as increasing import tariffs, reducing corporate taxes, and boosting domestic manufacturing. He has proposed imposing tariffs of 10 to 60% on goods from China and other countries, while renegotiating international trade agreements like the USMCA and potentially withdrawing from the World Trade Organization, WTO. Implementation. Trump would likely use executive orders to impose tariffs and incentivize companies to reshore their supply chains to the U.S. He may also extend the 2017 tax cuts and further reduce the corporate tax rate from 21% to 15%. Additionally, he could push for stricter, Buy American policies in federal procurement. Impacts. Positive. Short-term economic growth driven by tax cuts and increased domestic investment. U.S. businesses could benefit from higher profits and reduced regulatory burdens. Job creation in manufacturing and infrastructure sectors. Negative. Higher tariffs could destabilize global trade, leading to retaliatory measures from trading partners like China, the EU, and Asian nations. U.S. consumers may face higher prices for imported goods, leading to inflation, long-term damage to international trade relationships, and potential decline in global GDP. Historical context. Trump's America First policies echo the protectionist measures of the 1930s, such as the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act, which exacerbated the Great Depression. While modern economies are more interconnected, the risks of trade wars remain significant. 2. Foreign policy. Hardline and unilateral approach. Plan. Trump's foreign policy is expected to remain hardline and unilateral, with continued support for authoritarian leaders like Vladimir Putin, Russia, and Kim Jong-un, North Korea. He may also weaken international alliances like NATO and withdraw from agreements he deems unfavorable to U.S. interests, such as the Paris Climate Accord or the Iran nuclear deal, JCPOA. Implementation. Trump would likely use economic and diplomatic leverage to pressure allies into increasing their defense spending and reducing reliance on U.S. support. He may also renegotiate trade deals with the EU and Asian nations, potentially imposing tariffs or sanctions to achieve his goals. Impacts. Positive. Reduced financial burden on the U.S. from international alliances. Strengthened negotiating position in bilateral deals. Negative. Strained relations with traditional allies like the EU, Canada, and Japan. Increased geopolitical instability, particularly in regions like the Middle East and Eastern Europe. Potential decline in U.S. global influence and leadership. Historical context. Trump's approach mirrors the isolationist policies of the early 20th century, which ultimately led to the U.S. being unprepared for World War II. His skepticism of multilateralism could undermine decades of diplomatic progress. 3. Immigration and border security. Plan. Trump has pledged to continue building the border wall with Mexico and deport undocumented immigrants. He also plans to tighten immigration policies, particularly for high-skilled workers from Asia, while prioritizing merit-based immigration. Implementation. Trump would likely use executive orders and collaborate with law enforcement agencies to strengthen border control. He may also introduce stricter visa regulations and expand detention facilities for undocumented immigrants. Impacts. Positive. Reduced illegal immigration and enhanced border security. Potential increase in wages for low-skilled American workers. Negative. Labor shortages in industries reliant on immigrant workers, such as agriculture, construction, and technology. Strained relations with Mexico and Central American countries. Humanitarian concerns over the treatment of detained immigrants. Historical context. Trump's immigration policies are reminiscent of the restrictive measures of the 1920s, such as the Immigration Act of 1924, which limited immigration based on national origins. While these policies may appeal to his base, they risk alienating key demographic groups and harming the economy. 4. Energy and environmental policy. Plan. Trump is expected to prioritize traditional energy sources like oil and gas, while rolling back climate regulations. He may also resume issuing permits for liquefied natural gas, LNG, exports and withdraw from international climate agreements. Implementation. Trump would likely use executive orders to reverse Biden-era environmental regulations and promote fossil fuel projects through tax incentives and deregulation. Impacts. Positive. Revival of the U.S. energy sector, creating jobs and boosting exports. Lower energy costs for consumers and businesses. Negative. Setbacks in the global fight against climate change. Loss of U.S. leadership in renewable energy innovation. Long-term environmental damage and public health risks. Historical context. Trump's energy policies align with the deregulatory agenda of the Reagan administration, which prioritized economic growth over environmental protection. However, the urgency of climate change makes this approach increasingly risky. 5. Defense policy and military intervention. Plan. Trump plans to increase defense spending and strengthen alliances with strategic partners like Japan, South Korea, and India. He may also intervene in ongoing conflicts, such as the Russia-Ukraine war, to broker peace deals. Implementation. Trump would likely use diplomatic and economic leverage to pressure warring parties. He may also increase military presence in strategic regions like the Indo-Pacific and the Middle East. Impacts. Positive. Reduced tensions in conflict zones like the Middle East and East Asia. Enhanced U.S. military readiness and deterrence capabilities. Negative. Increased risk of military escalation and global instability. Potential strain on U.S. resources and public support for prolonged interventions. Historical context. Trump's approach to military intervention is similar to the peace through strength doctrine of the Cold War era. However, his unpredictable style could lead to unintended consequences. 6. Project 2025. Restructuring the federal government. Plan. Trump may implement Project 2025, an ambitious plan to restructure the federal government, including dismantling agencies like the Department of Education and the Department of Homeland Security. Implementation. Trump would likely appoint loyalists to key positions and replace federal employees with supporters of his agenda. He may also use executive orders to enact these changes. Impacts. Positive. Increased efficiency and reduced government spending. Streamlined decision-making processes. Negative. Weakening of democratic institutions and checks and balances. Increased political polarization and domestic instability. Historical context. Trump's restructuring efforts echo the New Deal era, when Franklin D. Roosevelt expanded the federal government. However, Trump's goal is to shrink it, which could have far-reaching consequences for governance. Conclusion. Donald Trump's potential second term, 2025 to 2029, would be a period of significant upheaval, with profound implications for the U.S. and the world. While some of his policies may yield short-term benefits, they also carry substantial risks, particularly in the context of globalization and intensifying geopolitical competition. Observers should closely monitor developments to better understand the impact of Trump's policies on the global stage. This expanded version provides a comprehensive analysis of Trump's potential second term, incorporating historical context, detailed policy implications, and broader geopolitical considerations. Let me know if you'd like further refinements or additional sections.